Welcome back to SJU. Pat yourselves on the back. We did it. It's Friday. We've made it. Congratulations to all out there. And we have an amazing show for you guys today because there's a lot going on in the world of nerd right now. Taika Waititi, Star Wars. I mean, we're definitely going to be talking about that. Peacock, Eric's favorite name for anything that's ever been.
Sure,
has a lot of new announcements.
Checked with me on that. Yeah.
I watched that egg hatch. That was a huge success of time.
Was it as exciting as when Game of Thrones revealed their date on with the ice melting?
Not quite. Okay. Not quite. And also, I know that we're saying bye-bye to the Fox name in many ways, so Dan's got thoughts on that. We all have thoughts on everything, though, because that's why we're on this panel, starting with EG himself, Eric Goldman in the house.
How's it going? I have a laptop today, just in case I need it for Peacock info at the ready.
Wow. I feel like that's the first time I've seen you with the laptop on the, like, of all of the stories, you were like, Peacock deserves the laptop.
It just was like, there's so many different little facets to it, just in case.
No, I think that's important because I couldn't remember, with all the streaming services, it's like, which one is ending up where and who and how and when and free and what? So definitely talking about that. Still working on the play on words with grit now that I realized that this morning, but Vanessa Gritton in the house.
Hey, yeah, the only ones that I usually get are like True Grit or Gritty, that mascot for that hockey team.
What is it?
Gritty.
You know, he looks so funny. He's like,
There was like a whole thing about, that's not as fun.
No, we'll find more. I'm sure there's wordplay out there.
You guys at home, tell us, what's the best tagline for a girl with grit? Yeah, that facial thing. Really
the head thing that I do to hide that I'm really sleepy.
Totally. And the person I agree with everything on the entire planet, Dan Murrell. Yes, we do.
Just doing I just watched Bad Boys 2 for Honest Trailer, so I'm doing my USA over here about this Fox thing, but I don't think it's gonna work. So.
Oh no!
We gotta get there to the end of the show, though. I got a whole 2 segments to stew over here before to marinate, to steep.
Good tease, though.
Thank you.
It's almost like you're a pro at this. Yeah. What? I'm Roxy Striar, in case I didn't tell you guys that already. And let's get right into this because this is news that has the internet shook and very excited. I think that people are typically, I actually haven't met somebody who's not a fan of Taika Waititi. So Taika Waititi being in talks for Star Wars, kind of epic. Just in general, what was the first thing you guys saw this announcement? Did you see on Twitter? Did a friend tell you?
I think it was on our company Slack yesterday that I saw that.
You got slacked about Taika.
Yes, I think Taika Slack came through.
What about you, Vanessa? What was
Twitter, actually. Before I even saw that it was Taika, I'll always stop for anything Fleetwood Mac related. And for a second, I was just like, oh my God, is Taika doing something with Fleetwood Mac? And then I realized it was Star Wars rumors, which still exciting, but not as exciting as the initial, is Stevie Nicks in a Taika Waititi
What is he going to do with them?
Dan, were you the slacker?
No, I was...
Is that what it's called when you send the Slack?
It should be.
We're all slackers.
No, much like anything that ever happens, we were all sitting silently in the writer's room, and Joe just goes, huh. Looks like Taika's doing a Star Wars. And we all went, okay. And then we all silently kept watching whatever we were watching.
Yeah.
The Honest Trailers writer's room is not as interesting as most fans think it is. It's a very quiet place.
I've been in there before, and I actually think it's fascinating. I could live there. But, this is something that I'm trying to take with a grain of salt because... First, we've got a lot of steps to go through still. And not only that, we could announce him as the director of a trilogy, and we could know that for a year, and then it could get taken from us. So there's just so many different things that could still happen here. But after his involvement with Mandalorian and people just really being excited about this, E.G., any thoughts on if Taika is in the Star Wars universe, what you want to see him do, if you think this is real?
I mean, I'm sure it sounds enough of the trades have now kind of come in with this too that I believe it's at least early discussions.
Yeah.
It makes sense because we've already talked about the fact that whatever the next Star Wars movie is, they really have to put a big foot forward, both because of how divisive the last 2 movies have been, but also because with the saga done, now you have to really sell people on big, exciting Star Wars movie. So it's going to be a combination of filmmaker and storyline. And so Taika would be the first big component there if they got someone like him. So it makes sense to me. They're going to want to get something like that excites people. But of course, you just instantly go, will this work out? Because Star Wars has a history of things not working out. And Taika infamously a couple years ago wrote, I'm looking at my computer, LOLs, LOL with a Z, I like to complete my films, when someone asked him would he want to do a Star Wars movie on Twitter. Before saying more seriously in an interview, yes, of course I'd be interested. It's just you have to be wary with what's happened. So you wonder about that.
Yeah, I agree. The one with the grit, what do you got?
Yeah, pretty much echoing on that statement in terms of like, I'd like to complete my films with the last Star Wars, because we didn't have an initial ending in mind, and it was very much like a director jumping in and kind of doing traffic control and then passing the baton. I personally, not only just because I love Taika, would love to see someone that has a vision for beginning, middle, end, and knows how they want to execute it. And like, especially when I think of the characters that were locked away in Ragnarok, like your Korgs and your those little pieces that work together, that makes me really excited to see him take on a Star Wars. But that it's also a question of like how much creative control would he be able to have over that project, because that's why Taika works. He trusts his actors, he trusts his talent. So,
Dan, what are you thinking?
I think that it behooves them to be in talks with many different people to find many different visions for Star Wars, because what we've seen in the 4 years since Force Awakens came out, and I don't know, I didn't think this was possible, but in 4 years, cinematically, Disney Plus, I think the Star Wars, as far as the legacy characters, is alive and well. People are excited about Kenobi. People are loving The Mandalorian. I think that you can explore other things there. Cinematically, somehow, in 4 years, they seem to have burned through 40 years of goodwill, at least as far as a thirst from fans for these legacy characters. Unforced errors, some of them, yes. I don't think that the reception to the last two films has helped. I think making the Han Solo film the way that it was made and the reception of that certainly hasn't helped. But this idea that Star Wars can lean on, for their films, these traditional, these classic characters, and even the new ones, somehow like, Poe and Rey and Finn, like it seems like people are just done with it. Yeah. So I think you've got to innovate. And now you're almost starting from scratch again. Yeah. I think if I was Disney, this is where I would be scared, because now with Star Wars and really with the MCU, your two biggest franchises, they're essentially starting over at the exact same time, because both of them have closed major chapters in their storytelling. So I think they need to be talking to people like Taika Waititi. They need to be talking to talented filmmakers, Deborah Chow and everyone that they've been developing with, because you've got to innovate now. They have used the very last drop of what was in the tank when they bought that saga for their film division, their film branch. So now they need to be talking to people like Taika Waititi, in my opinion.
Do you guys think that this would be the smartest move for them, to hire directors and really give them creative control of their projects, not step in as much, just give them singular movies, not necessarily trilogies, and say, this is your movie, make it your own? Or do you think that Star Wars, Kathleen Kennedy and everybody involved should still really be dictating and say, or dictating's a harsh word, really have a heavy hand in the creative?
It's a balance, right? Because you don't want to be like, just do anything. And it's like, you even see it with Star Wars, with Lucas, because how many people say, oh, Lucas was at his best when he had Gary Kurtz, like there has involved as a producer, versus Lucas doing anything he wanted and then maybe not making the best choices all the time. So it's a balance, but I do think it will help Star Wars at this point to move away from legacy characters or even recently introduced characters and do more, we assume, like brand new concepts. Because again, total speculation, but I've always wondered, because Taika is the closest thing to Lord and Miller if he signed on that they've done, and that didn't go so well. But I always wondered if Lord and Miller were doing a movie that wasn't young Han Solo, that had been just do something about like space smugglers, would it have been such a problem with not just Lucasfilm, but we heard like Lawrence Kasdan and people that were very precious about Han Solo as a character? the idea here, I think, because of course if you hire someone like Taika, you want him to be able to do his own thing. Maybe if he's dealing with characters that don't have 40 plus years of history and they feel like, oh, that's not how Han would act, you wouldn't have that issue as much. You know?
They have to find the characters that are going to fuel it for the next 40 years.
Right.
Exactly.
They cannot rely anymore on these characters that have traditionally been the fuel of the franchise. Number one, because they've just been, I mean, we've been telling stories about them now. Or not we, but they've been telling through the various iterations, through the
and the Playground,
the Legends, the EU/Legends series, the video games. Like, it's all largely been, with a few exceptions, tied up in these characters and this time period and this time frame. And it's like, you've got to move forward. You've got to move on, because there's new people being born every day that do not have the same connection to the past that we do, and that a lot of the fans do.
I think that's why The Mandalorian was received so well, because it wasn't as heavily tied to like the same character well that we've been mining, and it also dipped its toes in a little bit of like tangential genre, and instead of like just being the straight sci-fi space stories that we've seen, it played with Western, it played with samurai, it was a little bit more foot in two different genre worlds, to where it was really refreshing to the fan base. And I think leaning into that is probably going to be the best course of action.
Yeah.
When I was on the show on Wednesday, we were talking a lot about the Colin Trevorrow leaks or potential leak, whatever you want to call that situation. But I always feel like Star Wars comes in twos or threes. Like, you never hear one Star Wars story in a week. It's always followed up by something. Do you guys think that this was strategically placed right now, when they are talking about a previous director who left the project, and that script or the outline came to light? Do you think that this is coming so soon after that on purpose?
You never know, like, who is, feeding what, and there's always like agents and whatnot who could be feeding. But I will say that I'm
agents and whatnot.
I'm sure. I think it also makes sense, just because, look, now that Rise of Skywalker is out, and whatever you think of it, it's out. They have to choose their path forward. These conversations have to be happening constantly right now. Okay, who is doing that next movie? Is it still opening in 2022? What is it about? I mean, every day right now at Lucasfilm, I'm sure these conversations are happening, and we know, who knows how far along they are, because we don't even know. They said this could be the movie that Kevin Feige's producing. It might be a different movie. So I also think it just makes sense that we're going to be hearing a lot. Star Wars Celebration is in August, I think. So it's like, by then they want to be able to be like, the future is bright.
Here's our announcement.
Yeah, and have a lot of contracts signed and deals made that they can talk about.
Dan, do you think that this is on purpose now?
No. Only because, first of all, they've never been shy about making big splashy announcements about the filmmakers they're working with. Usually to their detriment, because they then either fire them or they leave. And secondly, again, it's a bit messy. Like, even if this was official, I think that you would have at least had Taika on board to not just, it's just rumors and everything. Yeah. It's this is the kind of discussions of, like we've said before with these leaks and everything. These are the kind of discussions that go on every single day at every studio. Yeah. The difference being now that there's so many outlets and so many people looking to make a splash that now you get, I think, more leaks like this, and because there are now so many other sub-outlets that cover it, then this just explodes on an exponential level, bigger and bigger and wider than it used to. So this is, this would be 10, 15 years ago, this would be a blurb in the Hollywood Reporter or Variety about Taika Waititi, but because we feed on this news, it just mushrooms into this much bigger, larger, first steps into a larger world. Yeah.
Speaking of so many different outlets and just a little blurb in Hollywood Reporter, Peacock is coming. Thank you to her, as Joe Starr says, for letting us know about all of this. It is incredibly challenging to keep up with all of these streaming services and platforms, but I've been excited to hear what Peacock is planning on doing. Every time I say the word Peacock, Eric Goldman's face kind of the little bit of a
can't believe they went with it.
But NBC Universal revealed that Peacock will be available as a free ad-supported service, offering around 7,500 hours of programming, including a selection of classic TV series and movies, next-day streaming of some broadcast shows as well. Which were any of you guys surprised just on that fact that this was going to be a free ad-based service?
Well, that's one tier.
One tier.
And you don't get everything.
But that was even available as an option, because most of the platforms are not doing that right now.
The earliest things we ever heard about Peacock, they were actually going to have it just be as like a version of which they also have here is sort of like an add-on to cable.
Yeah.
So I think this has gone through a lot of different iterations, and this is finally what they settled on. Yeah. It makes sense to me that they'd have the different tiers on pricing because, NBC Universal had long been a partner on Hulu, and that's starting to dissipate, but it's like they're using that idea. But the free thing, it's a smart at this point because you do want to get people to check things out, and it's harder and harder to say, even $5, even $9.99, I don't want to pay. Oh, it's free? Maybe I'll check that out. So I think it's a savvy move.
Okay. I kind of do too.
Yeah.
And, people, even just hearing the word free, people will go and look at the app.
Yeah.
They'll look at the service. And then that's how you get sucked in and end up paying $45 a month for something. What? That's never happened to me. Let's go through some of this lineup and some of the original programming. Dr. Death, which is based on a true crime podcast starring Jamie Dornan, Alec Baldwin, and Christian Slater. Anybody moving the needle for anybody?
Maybe.
The first thing it made me think of when I read Alec Baldwin is how much the name Peacock feels like a Jack Donnie, like a Jack move from Roth, where it's just like, Lemon, we're going with Peacock, and it just becomes a thing.
And then she has to deal with the nightmare that is Peacock.
They should make a show for Peacock, Lemon.
I hope it's good.
Great impressionist.
I hope it's good because Christian Slater tried so many different Christian Slater TV shows that didn't work until Mr. Robot, which worked very well. And if you haven't seen the final season, it's great if you fell off the show. So I hope he has a good follow-up because it was like The Forgotten and all those shows.
My Own Worst Enemy?
My Own Worst Enemy. Yeah. So hopefully this is another good one for him.
A thing that has been in the works for quite some time now, and also something that's gone through many different iterations, a Battlestar Galactica reboot. And this is coming from Sam Esmail, who Mr. Robot and Homecoming, and he had talked about this for a while, that this is what he was working on. There's other people who were involved originally and then not, but I'm assuming Battlestar fans are pretty excited about this.
I think everyone's just wary because they love the Ron Moore one so much. Obviously, Esmail helps. Like, they got a really good person.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. He's been kind of cagey. He had that one quote that made it sound like maybe it's in continuity with the Moore series, but I doubt if it is. Yeah, it's I think everyone just wants it to be something very different for that Moore series.
Yeah, when I spoke to Trisha Helfer about this series coming back, and she said that the entire cast still is on like a text thread, and that they were all pretty bummed that they wanted to be involved.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see maybe like cameos or something, but it doesn't seem like they're.
They did it with Richard Hatch on the Moore show.
Yeah, very true.
It can't be in continuity with the Moore show though, because then you couldn't have the Battlestar Galactica in the show called Battlestar Galactica, unless you name it something different. But then it's like, why?
It makes it sound like what he said, because he was like, what Ron Moore did was so great. I can't remember the exact quote, but something about what Ron Moore did was so great, we wouldn't want to trot on that. So I feel like it's going to take the basic idea but go in a very different direction. That's what I hope. That's if you're going to do it again, you need to do something very different.
Brave New World, it's based on a dystopian novel, and it's going to be starring Alden Ehrenreich and Demi Moore. Anybody moving the needle with this? I'm excited for Alden to have more work to put solo behind him a little bit.
Yeah.
I read Brave New World a bunch when I was in high school. It's one of I'm a big dystopian novel kid, and Brave New World in 1984 are very much my jam. My only concern is a lot of the times whenever I see someone tackle your Brave New Worlds, your 1984s, your dystopias, they tend to mine on the same thing, which is the very like Black Mirror, phone bad, everything watching you, direction, and it kind of taps into the same thing every time, and they tend to be a little bit more nihilistic instead of farming new ground. And I'm hoping that it's not just like a direct play on Brave New World, because so much has happened since, and maybe takes it and puts it into this universe and gives it a fresher spin.
Yeah.
A couple other things. Let's just run through some of these. One of Us is Lying. It's based on a New York Times best-selling young adult mystery thriller. I'm never surprised with how little amount of books I actually know. Straight Talk, coming from Rashida Jones, and NAACP Image Award winner Jada Pinkett Smith. Saved by the Bell.
Don't bury the leads.
I know. We talked about this week also.
Yes.
Saved by the Bell, baby. I guess, yay.
I hope it's good. The fact that it's a third 30 Rock writer. The fact that they hired the guy who actually writes the Zach Morris's trash shorts make me think they're very aware of the history of Saved by the Bell. Can they actually pull it off and make a good wink wink show, I think is going to be the question there.
Punky Brewster, AP Bio is coming back, which I know people were pretty excited about. The second movie spin-off from the long-running series Psych.
What?
Yeah, they'd already filmed. It was supposed to debut on USA.
Did that get you?
Yeah.
So they'd already made another Psych because they did the first reunion movie. They did a second one. It was supposed to debut on USA, but they said, wait, we've got Peacock. Psych. We've got Peacock launching. We're going to put all of Psych on there, and we're going to debut the new movie on there as well.
An SNL docu-series.
I'll probably love this.
I don't know if I'll love it, but I'll probably watch it. An original talk show series from Jimmy Fallon. Late night show starring Amber Ruffin.
I like her.
And it's produced by Seth Meyers. A Bravo's Real Housewives spinoff.
Yes.
Dan, I know that one's really piquing your interest.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
If it's 90 Day Fiancé, then we'd be talking.
That's true.
I just got on that because of you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
It's like a multiverse, though. You have to know so many different shows. It's crazy.
I watched before the 90 days, before I started watching anything else, and it threw me for a loop. I don't know if that's the order to go in. But guys, what city are we hoping for Housewives?
I was just wondering that.
It's a big question. Let us know in the comments.
Atlantis.
Atlantis?
Yeah.
Like,
You
like
heard
where
him.
Aquaman lives?
Yeah,
You
sure.
heard him, Dan.
World
real
of
place.
Atlantis.
You can
I'd
visit.
watch that.
Who counts as a housewife of Atlantis?
Well, you're gonna find out. You're gonna watch to find out.
I absolutely would. I smell a spoof coming off. Classics and catalogs include all SNL, 30 Rock, Parks and Rec, Law and Order, SVU, Friday Night Lights, yay, The Office. Any of those moving you guys towards this?
I mean, obviously, The Office was like the big, what they paid $400 to $500 million for it. They don't get it till next year because Netflix has it that long. I just don't know. It's like the question we talked about here before is The Office. People do love it as sort of comfort food TV. They watch it on Netflix. But I guess if you don't have to pay for it, that's the thing, right? If people do not have to pay next year, they go, oh, I want to watch The Office, and I can watch it for free. That's a good combo for them.
But what I was reading was that the way they were potentially thinking about doing it was like you could watch The Office season 2.
Oh, they might like give you a sample.
For a
Only
month.
the first one is
But
free.
if you want to watch all of The Office, then you have to pay.
That will be interesting how they divvy stuff out. Because also, by the way, I think it's awesome they're going to have all of SNL, which has rarely been put out. You know, there's been times when it's been there and then it's been pulled.
CISO, I think, was one of those times.
So all of SNL is pretty cool, but again, will they do the same
You can
sort
watch
of thing?
SNL's season 34.
You can watch like the really bad, the post
the Gene Dumanian era.
right. The Chris Rock, Chris Elliott season,
Yes.
We'll see.
Movies, guys. They're going to have some movies. E.T., Jurassic Park, Meet the Parents, Shrek, Psycho, Born Identity, The Mummy.
I forgot to include Fast and Furious, but another Universal franchise.
Fast and the Furious, great. Also, if you're huge The Tonight Show and Late Night with Seth Meyers fans, then you'll be able to watch them before they air. So
this actually is kind of fascinating to me. Just in the history of TV, this is a seismic shift. Even though I know it's like, it's not like Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, but the fact that they're going to put them on streaming hours before they air on network, which a lot of articles have pointed out is going to piss off all their affiliates so much.
Yeah, it is.
Because it's devaluing those shows which are supposed to air into local news and help the ratings of local news.
Yep.
But that is a forward-thinking, like, they're basically like, look, our ratings are dwindling on NBC proper. And, they get all their hits from me and Ryan were talking about YouTube is where they get their hits. I watch, the Closer Look all the time. I don't watch all of Seth Meyers, but I watch the Closer Look on YouTube. So now they're basically saying, oh, you want to watch that as early as possible? Well, it's going to be streaming on Peacock at 9 p.m. Eastern. 6 p.m. Pacific. So I think that's kind of
good
interesting.
math,
They're doing
quick
that.
math.
The Tonight Show franchise has come a long way from 10 or so years ago when Conan O'Brien, remember the reason he quit, he wasn't fired necessarily, he quit because he said that moving the Tonight Show 30 minutes later would fundamentally change what the Tonight Show was, and that he would rather leave than be part of, completely changing the legacy of that show just by moving it 30 minutes later. And now you see here a complete change in how it's distributed.
Yeah.
We've come a very long way.
Yeah, just to me, it really shows that NBC Universal as a company is basically like, look, we know our network TV is dwindling, but so we don't care. Like, we're just going to put this show out hours early. I think that's an interesting move.
Honestly, it's kind of taking a page out of streaming's book, because you guys know, like, anybody who has a Patreon knows that if they release something an hour before on their Patreon than they do on their YouTube, then they can get people to go to their, like, people will pay just to see something 30 minutes before the rest of the world, an hour before. I mean, imagine how much people would have paid if they could have seen Game of Thrones 3 hours before everybody else saw Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I do that with webcomics.
Yeah, and of course, this is part of the premium. We should say, like, you can't the talk shows being put out early is only part of the premium.
But people would. I think that's something people would pay for.
What Jimmy Fallon viewer can't wait 2 hours to watch the show?
The one who's getting older doesn't want to go to sleep. Wants to go to sleep.
Less about which of his and more about, like, who's going to be on the show that night. Like, if you are, like, a diehard Taylor Swift stan.
Maybe.
I don't know. Not me necessarily, but I
see that great interview that Jimmy Fallon will do.
The not me thing I should also mention as a non-sports fan, but I understand a lot of people do like sports, is that premium is going to have a lot of live sports, and I'm like, okay, well, that's a selling point.
The Olympics was what the Olympics. Of everything, like all of this stuff that the Peacock has talked about. Like, I read all this stuff. It's like, oh, I look forward to hearing that stuff exists and saying I'll watch it someday and never getting around to it, like I do with almost everything that's released nowadays. But the one thing they said that got me interested was the Olympics. Being able to watch stuff, because it's in Tokyo.
Not on delay,
being able to watch stuff live, if you can, of the Olympics. That's the one premium thing I was like, okay, now that interests me. So they could very well get my subscription for 1 month.
And maybe you like it. Maybe you stay.
Maybe you forget to
delete
cancel.
it. Yeah.
That's a good move. That's a good move.
I do that all the time. April 15th, guys. That's when this is set to debut. What is Xfinity X1? That's just regular
That's their cable.
Xfinity.
That's their existing cable.
So it's going to be basically like they get it in a beta early, and then I think a couple months later it will be available for everyone.
Okay, so if you are a customer of Flex or Xfinity X1, then you're set. You're hooked up, but it's not going to be available more widely for another 3 months after that.
I said 2, 3. It's right there on the paper.
Yeah. That's how you read.
I know. I never learned.
Did anybody else have anything that really compelled them that we didn't talk about that makes you want to Peacock all day long?
I mean, I think that their big selling point is the free preview right now, because they do not have like a bright, shiny, like, oh my God, they don't have a Mandalorian, right?
Yeah.
So they have some interesting sounding stuff, some shows that could end up good. We'll see. The nostalgia plays are weird. Saved by the Bell. Me and Billy Biz were talking about this yesterday. Saved by the Bell we get because it actually kind of survived many different generations watch Saved by the Bell. Punky Brewster's super weird because it's not like it has any importance to people from the last couple decades. But so the shows are a mixed bag that something could end up being great. We'll see. But I think that the fact that it's available for free is a smart move to get people to check it out.
The gritty one I see you looking through. Is there something piquing your interest?
Piquing the Peacock?
Because it seems like not really.
Not finishing that.
Sure. I think there's going to be a lot of jokes.
Yeah. I was going through it and like, honestly, a lot of it is comfort food viewing that I'm not necessarily going to follow to another streaming service. It's usually if it's available on something that I already have, and I'm like, well, I just finished this original programming, and I'm going to jump into this. The free is the main thing that's appealing to me, because even a lot of just the original shows aren't really like Mandalorian style tied to something in universe that NBC currently has that would make me want to be like, oh, that's a continuation of a story I want to see. And it's so either completely new and not attached to anything that I am not familiar with it, or it's comfort food viewing. So the free is the main standout.
Okay, so the free, the Olympics. So you had a little bit of more stuff. The Saved by the Bell, I guess.
Look,
sure,
I'm in for Saved by the Bell. Yes, I am in for Saved by the Bell.
Well, what are you guys in for at home? Very curious. What Peacock thing are you peacocking about?
I like it.
I don't know.
We'll be NBCing you.
Ooh, we have so many months to make puns. This makes me very, very excited. Also, let us know what you think about Taika Waititi, what kind of Star Wars movie you would want to see him direct, what other directors you want to be involved in a Star Wars movie. And in general, thank you for being here. If you want us to know how you're feeling, comment, like this video. I think we're doing well in the likes department. department. But everybody, stop what you're doing, hit that thumbs up. We say nice things about Ryan this week. Ryan rocks.
Ryan!
Yes, Ryan.
He reminded me of the Olympics just now.
Ah, that's right.
He's on it.
Ryan for the win, because he's the best. And then I was gonna just say hit the bell, but he already hit it and now wandered away from it. So just remember that bell sound. You can hear it in your head right now, and all of that great stuff. Eric,
Yes.
you've been working on some stuff, my friend. You've been having some thrills, some fun. What's going on in the world of Star Wars and Eric?
I keep it under wraps, but I like Star Wars and I like Disney theme parks. I can now reveal. Rise of the Resistance is the big new ride at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. It opened a month ago in Orlando. It is opening today. The crowds are there as we speak at Disneyland. I got to check it out yesterday, and I'll just say it is freaking amazing. I think that it's funny because Star Wars is in such a weird state right now with the characters, and this is all the sequel movie characters. Oh, here's some pictures I took. But as far as
aren't
feeling
you
like
fancy?
you walked into a Star Wars. It is really, really cool. Just as far as, there's a whole bunch of stormtroopers. There's a whole bunch. They have so many actors playing, Resistance and First Order, and you're walking around a Star Destroyer.
I love this.
And it's all these. There's animatronics.
Oh.
Meet Lieutenant Beck.
You took that video?
Yeah. There's a lot going on in this ride.
What are you filming on? This looks great.
This is an iPhone 8 Plus.
Damn.
So there's a lot going on here. Oh, this is a funny moment where you see Hux just come in here, and he has just gotten no respect for his colleagues here.
Oh, my
Is that
jealousy.
Nien Nunb down there?
Yeah, Nien Nunb has a fun. Anyway, it's a really, really cool ride. They have a bunch of actors from the movie, and it's got so many different animatronics, and the ride through, there's Kylo Ren's lightsaber cutting through above you. I wrote an article about it. You can read it on fandom.com. The link is in the description, thanks to our friend Ryan we just cheered for. And I would just say, even if you're casual Star Wars fan, this is a pretty impressive experience to go through.
I feel incredibly jealous right now, which is not an emotion I feel very often. I want to be there. What do I have to do to not wait 8 hours in line for this?
Right now, you have to be there at opening, and you have to go on their app, and you have to join a boarding party that later in the day they'll call you. I heard this morning it went in 45 seconds after the park opened. They were all filled up for the day. It's day one.
Damn.
It's day one. But
Wait a couple weeks. You'll be
wait a little bit. Yeah.
All right.
So read that article because it's cool, and you'll learn a little bit about how it's in canon. You are now part of Star Wars canon when you go on this ride, guys.
That's actually really cute. I want to be part of Star Wars.
Yes.
That's awesome. Guys, we have tons of other content for you as well. Honest Trailers and Honest Trailers commentary for Bad Boys is out on Screen Junkies. You said that you have been in a Bad Boys 2 mood today.
Well, I was just having to kind of, I used the mantra that they used, trying to calm myself down, much like the movie did.
Oh no! We disagree again.
The Mona Lisa, what was the line? The Mona Lisa of Michael Bay moments.
The Mona Lisa of Michael Bay moments.
Yeah, that was good stuff.
Too.
That was very good.
Also, yesterday you guys shot our annual Screen Junkies show, our Oscars picks.
That's right.
So how'd that go?
That was a lot of fun. It's always one of my favorite episodes of the year to do. We convened our panel to we do the nominations if we were the Academy. It's
which you are in my heart.
Oh, thank you. It's a nod to Siskel and Ebert a little bit. When I was growing up, one of my favorite shows that they ever did every year was called Memo to the Academy, where they would highlight the things that they wanted to be nominated. And so we go through, we nominate our picks for 6 major categories, and this year exclusive reveal here. Take that, Peacock. Exclusive reveal here. Not only did we present our nominees, this year we picked our winners. So not only are you going to get to find out our nominees, you will also find out who our Academy Award winners would be if we were the Academy.
Were you guys all in agreement on a lot of things, or were you across the board different?
There's always deliberation, a lot of ties to be broken.
Very pragmatic deliberation.
I will say I'm very pleased with the results, though, and I hope that others will be as well.
Okay. Things that we're pleased with the results of. Never surrender, guys. If you have not seen this already, what are you doing? What are you doing as a Screen Junkies fan? Go check it out. It's in the link in the description. You guys kicked butt, and congratulations on this movie. I can't wait to see what else you guys do in this department in the future. See, I'm putting out the vibes.
The Oscar pick is next weekend.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yes. Oscar Picks airs next Saturday.
Next Saturday.
Tease to next weekend.
Nope.
Yes. Thank you, Ryan.
We're very
See?
good at those teas. Again, we're complimenting Ryan right now. Another thing Ryan did, which is amazing, is put links in the description below so that you guys can help support the Australian wildfires. I know it's very overwhelming right now to try to figure out where you should show your support, and so we want to help in any way we can by making that a little easier for you guys. So if you do want to support what's going on there, which is just absolutely atrocious and part of the planet that we all live on, then check out the links in the description below. We're doing that for the rest of January, so help us support Australia by checking those out. We really appreciate it. Things that we do not appreciate as much, though, Dan, I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this next topic. Begone Fox title, because Disney don't want you no more. This is via Variety, guys. Walt Disney Company is dropping the Fox brand from the 21st Century Fox assets it's acquired last March. Variety has learned, so just 20th Century. No more Fox on that one. And also the 20th Century Fox Film Studio will become 20th Century, like I just said, and Fox Searchlight Pictures will become Searchlight Pictures. Oh boy, I can feel it already. Dan Murrell, this is something that you are excited about?
Passionate
about would be the word. Passionate about would be the word.
Okay, talk to us. So what does this actually mean? What are they trying to do? Why are they doing this? And what will it affect for us viewers?
Well, Disney has said that the reason they're doing this is because there will be a Fox television presence that remains, because they did not get that in the acquisition.
The network is still
Fox.
Fox.
And they wanted to avoid brand confusion. But pardon the rant, but
Dan's rants.
This is my big problem with how things work now. Fox is not a brand necessarily. When you treat it as a brand, I think you're doing a disservice to the history of this industry, to the history of the medium. Fox, going back to the origination, Fox Film was founded by a guy named William Fox. So Fox is a name. Fox is a man's name. He put his name on his studio, Fox Film. This was a first-generation American immigrant, came over here from Hungary, bought a share in a Nickelodeon, turned that into Fox Films, one of the first major studios. At the beginning of the film industry, when a bunch of the studios were trying to block out the small guys like him, he sued them under the Sherman Antitrust Act and won, allowing the marketplace to remain open and help remain open through that. He purchased one of the first sound technologies. Like, William Fox was one of the pioneers of sound in feature films. Movietone was one of the original optical soundtrack technologies that allowed the standard of sound that created the movies as we know them. He produced Fox released Sunrise by F.W. Murnau. That was the first commercially produced feature film with an optical soundtrack. This is an historic film. He had one of the first Fox Films had one of the first Best Picture nominees ever. The first year of the Academy Awards, one of the nominees was from Fox Films. They released the Three Stooges early works. They had one of the first Best Picture winners in Cavalcade ever. William Fox lost his company in the Great Depression. He was in a severe automobile accident. He was injured very badly. And on top of that, the Great Depression happened, and he lost Fox Films in a hostile takeover. It merged with another company, which became 20th Century Fox. But his name stayed on that studio even after he lost the company. He was so desperate to get back into it. He was convicted of bribery. There was a judge who was like presiding over a bankruptcy proceedings. He was convicted of bribing that judge. He went to prison because he was a convicted felon. When he tried to get back into the film industry, by the time he was making his comeback, the Hayes laws, which we talked about, like the motion picture industry basically was legislated to be the moral center and to represent moral, whatever, which if you know what was going on in Hollywood is just a crock of garbage. But because of the Hayes laws and the Hayes Code and the fact that, no stain could be present in the film industry, he was essentially blacklisted from the very industry that he helped to innovate. When he died, he was he was called by a lot of people, they called him the film industry's forgotten man, because he innovated, he founded the studio literally from the ground up. And the only thing that was left of his legacy to so many people was the fact that that name remained on that studio. That even though he was shut out of the industry, that even though most people forgot about him, because, you know, when it merged with 20th Century Fox, then they did, of course, they did Star Wars. They did all of these big movies.
Yeah.
People remember 20th Century Fox. For a lot of people, the only legacy that he had left was that name on that studio. And now Disney decided to drop it because they don't want to be confused with a TV network. Like that would ever happen. And this is what pisses me off about this whole corporate BS strategy. When you buy these things, you should have a corporate responsibility to show some kind of stewardship over the history of the industry. And by the way, a little bit of respect for a guy who didn't get a whole lot in his life. And instead, they decided in a freaking board meeting, a bunch of pencil pushers, to drop this guy's name off of the studio after over 100 years after he founded one of the most groundbreaking studios and helped innovate some of the best technology of all time in a boardroom. It's garbage.
Yeah.
It is absolute garbage. And Disney, I will say, of everything that they have purchased, other than maybe Marvel, I think Disney has shown spectacularly bad stewardship over just about everything they've purchased, and it's bullshit.
Honestly, that made me want to cry a little bit. Because
Thank you
also
for that,
think
Dan.
about this person passing, thinking that that's the one thing that he had.
Yeah.
And feeling at least probably a little confident that that's the way that it would remain. It's really sad.
I'm gonna slightly counterpoint.
I love that. That's what we do here.
I agree with everything Dan just said.
Yeah.
As a film fan, I like this is crushing. Like hearing like they're gonna change the name. It's like there's so much history there. I'm also deeply concerned. We were talking about this in the office earlier. Like, are they gonna change it on catalog titles? They just put that logo back on Star Wars. Now are they gonna change it again? That would really suck. And I really, really, really hope they don't do that.
Why would that really suck?
I just feel like because tying into what Dan just said, as far as like this is the history, this is the studio that put out this movie, this was their name at the time, I would hate to see them change it. I'm also bracing that they might. I will say, on the business level, I get it, just because, and it's going to take so long. Changing this name will not fix the brand confusion problem, but I think that they want to chip away from it. First of all, they said there probably were some other conversations just about what Fox and Fox News means to a lot of people. That Disney's like, that's not us. But I will say, right now they say they haven't made a decision on the TV studio, because there's 20th Century Fox TV. Disney also owns them, and they produce everything from This Is Us. How did what am I forgetting about? How I Met Your Mother was a 20th Century Fox show. There's so many shows that studio produces. Oh, it's Simpsons, Family Guy. And even the other day, it was funny because Fox, the network, was at TCA, and they were being asked, hey, are you going to do more 24? Hey, would you ever bring back Firefly? And it was interesting to have them as a network ask these questions, because everything they were saying, maybe we consider it, we'll see. But they don't own any of those shows. Disney now owns all those shows. Disney, it used to be all one company, but now Disney owns Firefly. Disney owns 24. And I see so many people, fans, who don't understand the distinction anymore, and they think that Disney did buy Fox, the network, when they didn't. So on that very like cynical corporate level, I do understand that like people don't understand we don't own that network, and people don't understand that that's not our company, why they would make that decision. And even though I think it's simplistic to say that, because it's going to take so many years, everyone calls them Fox movies. Are we going to say 20th movies? That's weird. That doesn't flow as easily.
Well, 20th Century doesn't make any name as a company.
No.
Decouple it from Fox, because then it's just like 20th Century Films.
Right. And because they made the decision, they made the distinct decision that they were going to even stick with 20th Century Fox when the new millennium began. They could have changed the name. They didn't. The company became 21st Century, but the film studio remained 20th. So I understand in the long term why they feel like, oh, we don't own this network. We have nothing to do with Fox Network, and we have nothing to do with Fox News. So we want to change the name and gradually get people to understand the distinction there, and understand that, the company that owns 24 and the network that aired it are different. But I also feel like, for film history's sake, my heart is with Dan, but I also, on the business level, I get, because guess what? Businessmen do not think with their heart. I understand why they made that decision as well.
This feels like an episode of Movie Fights right now, and I'm digging it. So as the judge, the gritty judge over here, what are you thinking? How do you feel?
Man, I'm leaning more on Dan's end just because it taps into something that really bothers me. It taps into that part that just doesn't feel right whenever I see a show uploaded on Disney Plus that has a joke missing from it.
Yeah.
Or whenever a movie that's been available forever just gets senselessly pulled into the vault. It's one of those reasons why I've also leaned so heavy towards physical media, because in the age of streaming, it is so easy to just make a change and put revisionist history into it, and
so many people will never know.
And then people will never know what the actual, not just original piece was, but also why it was removed. And it's just a choice that someone makes, and it changes. And because it's streaming, you just wake up and it's different. And it taps into that icky feeling that I have about it. And I'm definitely real bummed about it.
It was fun when you were asking about the why would it suck thing. It reminded me of when Disney Plus put out their list of everything they were going to have. Well, not everything, most everything they were going to have. And at the time, they'd put the Disney logo on Miracle on 34th Street and some other 20th Century Fox movies. And everyone was like, wait a second, are we going to put on these movies that have been out decades, nearly a century for some of them, and suddenly it'll have a Disney logo at the start? That feels like you were rewriting history. And that's why, I really hope they don't change those catalog titles because they don't have to. They still own the name 20th Century Fox. I know growing up as a kid and watching the old logos or the slightly different names of studios, or the fact that the 20th Century Fox, a News Corp, all the different names it would have underneath, it's that's kind of a fun part of the history, is seeing that, And I even hate that Disney has changed the logos. We were talking about this again earlier about they've changed the logo to modernize on some of their old movies. They shouldn't do that. It's let the movie this was what the movie looked like when it came out, and that's okay.
Don't spoon feed it to me. Just let me see what the history is. Let me dive in. I can take it.
I think it's interesting now how many times we're going to have to make decisions, not exactly like this, but with all of the things that 2019 and 2020 have brought to light about people who have worked in the industry and trying to decide whether or not their name should stay on projects. In the past, I think that this, to me, it's people like him that we do need to protect, because he didn't do anything, in my opinion, that deserves his name getting taken off his lifetime of work and everything that he built. So I feel like I am Team Dan on this one, or Team Fox, but I also hear what you're saying, because the Dan, when you said, do you think anybody's going to confuse them? There's no way. I do think that they are.
I see people who do.
I don't think any of our friends.
You don't know the difference between a movie studio and a television network?
No, because they think they heard Disney bought Fox. And so they do assume, they must own the network too. It's it's
too bad. People assume dumb shit all day, every day. You got to tell you how many dumb assumptions I see every day.
But I do feel this was such an insane deal, and so it is, because I've had to explain it to a lot of people and be like, they bought the studio but not the network. But it's that's just a distinction that so many casual viewers, don't make in their mind. And
I think that is totally true. But then I also am with you, Dan, where I don't care if they understand that. Like that, so
which
what?
is totally valid.
Yeah. But also, I get all sides. This is a complicated industry.
I mean, here's an idea. If you're worried about people getting confused, maybe if you're Disney, you have a streaming arm that makes 80 million things a day. Maybe make a little thing about William Fox that explains who he was and why his name is on the studio and the importance of that. Instead of just erasing the name, maybe put in the legwork to distinguish it yourself and have some respect for this history that you bought
Yeah.
And now we're just literally erasing.
You know, it's so interesting you said that because as you were talking, I was thinking,
Sorry,
like,
I
what
didn't
a
direct
great.
that at you. That was not.
Vanessa.
I'm sorry. If our Slipknot standee was there, it would have been the same.
No, I completely. As you were describing the story, Dan, I was thinking just like entertainment value wise, what an interesting story that would be. And because we are in 2020, where you have access to Instagram and Twitter and your own streaming platform, and so many different areas of opportunity to release things, I feel like they could say this is why we're doing this, and then by the way, I feel like the fans would be like, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Disney. That was a really honorable, a little goodwill towards you.
For embracing it.
Yeah.
And they've done that before. Like, how many Disney movies have we watched where there's like some kind of in between the actual short, like a quick 15-second blurb from like an animator or someone behind the actual project explaining some of the backstory? It wouldn't be foreign.
Have any of you been on the Fox lot recently since
Not
the sale?
recently, no.
It's just
Yes.
it's very odd because the 20th Century Fox owned a huge lot here in LA. And now in the sale, that didn't go to Disney, so Murdoch still owns the lot. And so instantly, once the sale went through, they changed it so it's not the 20th Century Fox lot, it is the Fox lot, mostly the network being represented. Even though if you walk around it, it still has up all those old paintings of Sound of Music and The Simpsons and Empire Strikes Back, which are all owned by Disney now, who is still leasing out offices on the lot and will for years, probably. It's just a strange thing to be on that lot now and be like, oh, okay. Like you go into the store and it's all Fox Network stuff. And there's like a couple things for like Simpsons and things that air on the network, but all the other stuff's gone because it's like, oh well, Disney owns that now. So it's weird. It's definitely a very mixed bag to say this, but I guess it's weird that his name lives on with the network. Like that's the strange thing is the network launched as like the TV brand of this giant corporation, and they use the Fox name, and then strangely that's where it continues.
But he didn't innovate.
No, he had nothing to do with it. Yeah.
You know?
He probably wouldn't like that very much.
But he would have greenlit Married with Children.
We don't know. We don't know. All right, guys, a ton of stuff that we just went over today, and we will be back next week with you. So in the meantime, where can everybody keep up with you?
You can find me at fandom.com for that Star Wars article and others like it, and the Eric Goldman on Twitter and Instagram.
The gritty one? Is it
The
working?
gritty
What do
one.
we
I like
think?
the
Gritty
gritty
one.
Dirty one. Yeah.
I dig it. In like a sand way. Probably not the other way.
Anakin hates it.
Hates it. You can find me on @Gritton on all forms of social media. You can also find a lot of the horror comedy that I write under Hail Night Church on all forms of social media as well.
And Dan?
Find me on Twitter @MurrellDan. You can find me here mostly every day. You can find Charting next Tuesday because we're not here on Monday because it's a holiday here in the U.S. Martin Luther King Day here in the U.S. So Charting will be on Tuesday, not Monday next week. And we'll be we'll be here, but pre-taped. Yes, thank you, Ryan.
And
3 for 3 today. Thank you.
He's killing it.
Yell for yourself, Ryan.
Yeah.
I'm everywhere at Roxy Striar, and we did just want to acknowledge for a minute because I saw this on Twitter yesterday, and it absolutely broke my heart because going back to the TV fights days, this was a part of the community, a fan of the community, and honestly, I think of this community as family. And he passed away. Corey Williams. Just wanted to send our love to anybody who was affected by his death, which I think is everybody in this community. So, Corey, thank you for being such an amazing supporter of us here at Screen Junkies. We're thinking about your family and all of your friends, and we loved having you be a part of this community. So, just wanted to close this out with everybody thinking about Corey Williams today. Was really, really touched and saddened by his passing. And I remember his name popping up on the TV fight screen all the time. So I'll think of you fondly. And thank you guys so much for watching this show today. We'll be back on Monday for another SJU.